Hi, I'm Veronica, and today, especially for Easter, I would like to show you how you could spring into spring season. And we're going to focus on the legs, and finding that springiness, that force, strength, resilience, and mobility in the whole legs and how they connect with the rest of the body so that you can do with ease all those outdoor activities that are waiting for you. And we'll start lying down, but before that, you might want to prepare the props. And you're gonna need two yoga blocks or something that could replace them. So something that is sturdy and of similar height. So let's lay down on the deck. And you can maybe move around a little bit and give yourself a tiny massage before you settle in something I call constructive rest. That is the position when you have your knees bent and feet on the mat. Give yourself a second to settle, and we'll begin exploring that movement of the legs. So you can pick up one foot of the mat and start with really small circles of the knee in the air, which actually means moving your thigh bone in the hip socket. And then you can let that leg float up towards the ceiling. And it really doesn't need to be straight. And focus on your heel. And then imagine that you're going to create the movement with the heel the same way as I'm doing now with my wrist. So it's this kind of spiraling motion. You could do it first with the wrist so that you get an idea. And that travels down the whole leg and makes that leg rotate around its own axis. So I'm giving you an example of how it looks like with the other limb, with the arm, and then you can rest that arm and do the same with the leg. So it starts with the heel creates this rotational movement, so it's not drawing a circle in the air with the foot when the whole leg is still. It's starting with the heel and rotating your leg around its own axis. You know it's happening if you place your hands around your thigh and you feel that that thigh is moving right, left, right, left, right, left, as if you're, I don't know, opening a jar and something like that. So this movement really travels through whole leg, and you might already start feeling that this is an effort actually, that all those muscles in your leg wake up with that. And after a few of these, you could also point and flex the foot a few times. And then keep it slightly flexed. And imagine that you could make your leg longer, but at the same time, it's really heavy in the hip joint. And start reaching with your heel away. And keep on reaching away and reaching away. And then stop it when your both thighs are at the same level. You can even make sure of that if you place both your hands at the thighs, and that's when you have your arms straight and both hands on both sides. So you might feel that again, this leg starts working, and then you can lower it all the way to the mat. Release it. Remember that you want it relaxed completely once it's down, and then you can bend that knee, slide it, the foot along the floor, and step the foot on the mat. Okay. And let's do the same with the other leg. You can lift the foot off the mat, make those micro circles with the knee in the air first. And then let that leg float. The knee doesn't really need to be straight. In fact, why not? You could do this kind of movement of bending and straightening like a couple of times from the knee, and it's gonna be a different kind of movement, different kind of effort than when you engage the entire leg. So now we're gonna try that other way when you focus on the heel and the heel is creating this kind of spiraling motion. It's like drawing some nice patterns in the air, and the heel leads, the whole leg follows. Is movement of the leg around its own axis. It's not moving the still leg in the air. It's very different. It's making this leg move around its own axis. So it keeps on twisting right, left, as if, I don't know, you're screwing a bulb or something like this. And you can imagine you're kind of climbing, you're spiraling your way up and up and up with this movement. And then maybe that leg ends up a little bit straighter than in the beginning. You could also point and flex the ankle a few times. And then imagine that you could suck the sole of the foot to the ceiling, maybe draw a little bit longer, and then that heel starts reaching away, until you have both thighs at the same level. Hold it there for a moment. Sometimes you can even pulse it slightly or just keep it still, and then slowly lower it all the way to the floor. Once it's down, you can release it. Bend the knee, slide the foot along the floor, and step the foot on the mat. Give yourself a moment to feel how the legs have already woken up. And we're going to wake the back. So let's turn around to the front, the back of the legs. Lie down on the front. Again, you can give yourself a moment here, maybe even give a little massage for the front of the thighs by rocking the hips gently right and left. And then bend your leg and flex your foot a little bit, not all the way, just tiny. And try to feel where is that spot where your heel is above the knee. And then you're going to do the double action. So press with the thigh into the mat first, and then lift the thigh off the mat, but don't confuse the thigh with the hip. So both hip bones rest on the mat. You can check it if those hip bones here in front are touching the mat. You don't want the hip to lift. You want your thigh to lift. And ideally, you don't want to move your leg out to the side. So it's lifting straight up to the ceiling. And then lower, release. Then you can repeat that. Press down with the thigh. And then lift that heel up so the whole thigh lifts, but the hip bone stays. Release. Maybe just one time more. Let it all relax. You can roll that leg. And you can also check how it would be to lift the straight leg up. But again, the rule is the same. You're lifting entire leg, but not the hip. You can first press that leg into the mat slightly, then you feel that all the muscles engage, and then lift the straight leg. So this time the knee is straight, and it doesn't need to go very high. You don't want to make a big back bend, just a tiny bit. And then lower and release. And you can try it again. Press with the leg down, lift the leg, whole thigh lifts. Release, relax. Okay. And now if you're particularly adventurous and you'd like to go for something a little bit more intense, you can try the next move, but be careful not to do too much too soon, because with this one, your muscles might be in such a shock that they will get cramped. Okay, so that one goes like this. You're bending the leg, and the knee out to the side, and the sole of the foot is against the calf. And then trying to work as much as possible from the leg rather than pushing away with the arm. See if there is any possibility, and it might be there is no such possibility, and it's fine, to lift that knee off the mat. Sometimes it's enough just to engage the muscles as if you were going to lift it, and that works as well. So see if there's any possibility to let that knee hover just a tiny bit. And then you can release that leg. Relax it completely. We're gonna try the same on the other side. So the first one, you bend the knee, heel is above the knee. First you press with the thigh into the mat, and then lift that heel up towards the ceiling. The whole thigh lifts. Slowly lower, and release the leg. You can do it 2 more times. First pressing with the thigh down, then lifting that leg, but trying to not to move the knee out, and definitely keep the hip still down on the mat. Three times will be enough. 3 times is completely fine. And the version when the leg is straight, you will feel that it's not just the leg, obviously, that is engaged in all of that. The core is working, the buttocks are working, but that's good. You know, we want to engage as much of the body in these movements as possible. So you can first press with that leg into the ground slightly so that you feel that all the muscles turn on, and then lift it, keeping the thigh lifted but the hip still on the mat. And then lower, and make sure that you release everything once your leg is down. Again, first engage, then lift, lower, and release. Maybe last time. You can always roll the legs. And if you want, you can try the version when you bend the knee, place the foot against the calf. You can press with that foot against the calf. It makes it a little bit easier. And then either make that effort as if you wanted to lift the knee or you actually lift the knee. And then release. You can roll the legs again. Maybe you want to bend the knees and let the lower legs drop from side to side or move around in space so that you give your legs and your thighs in front of the pelvis a little bit of massage. And then let's turn on the side. Okay. So here you can support your head with the arm that is over the head, and then bend the knees. Try to keep a straight line from the back of the head to the sacrum. It's bent a bit, but less than 90 degrees. And keep one hip above the other. And then keep your feet together, and on inhalation, move your top knee away from the bottom without letting that hip tilt back. And on exhalation, lower. Opening, and then you let it release. And when you release, make sure that everything relaxes. Then you lift, then you slowly lower. And again, you lift, and you slowly lower. The other version of it is when you lift your lower leg, and then you lower it like mermaid tail. You lift the lower leg and rest it on the foot. You lift the lower leg but the knees stay together, and then you lower. You can also lift the whole leg so that it's parallel to the floor, and you can even bring that knee really close towards the chest, and then reach with that leg far away behind you. So you could use the exhalation to bring that knee in, and inhalation to reach with that leg far behind. So you can really feel that, again, that whole leg really wakes up. And you don't want to tire it too much, so make sure that you don't get to the stage where everything is burning and hurting. You can make a few little hip circles before you swap the side. So here we are on the other side. One straight line from the back of the head to the sacrum, knee slightly bent. Check that one hip is above the other. And then start lifting the top knee, keeping the feet together and making sure that your pelvis doesn't tilt backwards. Lower and release. That release is very important. So you want to turn the muscles on and then release them and let them rest. Inhale for the effort of lifting and exhale when you release it. So this is the clam. And then there's also mermaid's tail when you lift the foot, the top foot away from the bottom foot, but the knees stay together. So if you had your hands on the top leg, you might feel what turns on when you lift the leg and what happens when everything relaxes. You really want to feel that everything does relax once you lower that leg. You can also have the whole leg parallel to the bottom one and then bring that knee to the chest on the exhale and reach with that leg far away on the diagonal on the inhale. So it's exhale to bring the knee in and then reach with that leg far behind. A few times, but check that you're not doing too much. You don't want to overdo it. You want to gently wake it all up, but not create any burn, any twitching, nothing like this. Great. So once we've woken it all up in the lying down position, we're gonna change the relation to the ground. Once in all fours, we can wake up the feet a little bit, tuck the toes under, and reach with the hips back. Do it a few times. Maybe even walk the hands a little bit closer. You'll see what is okay for the soles of the feet to take. Sometimes it's even okay to go all the way up. I really want to wake up those feet a little bit. Okay, and then you can reach with one leg back, maybe bounce it a little bit. And you're going to lift it, lifting kind of from the belly, from somewhere the solar plexus, trying to keep your hips even and trying so there's no shifting of the weight, your pelvis doesn't tilt to one side, and there's no dip in your lower back here. So it's not lifting the leg by sinking everything else. The core, the back stays quite stable, and the only thing that changes is that that leg lifts. Okay, you can release it, maybe walk your tail a little bit. And we'll do something quite opposite. So this time you're gonna tuck the toes under and bring the hips towards the heel. So everything is kind of really curled up and rounded. And we'll go between these two movements quite in a quite dynamic, springy way. So it's a little bit when you start a race, almost when you start the sprint, and you kind of using that springiness in the leg to reach forward. And that's when you release the leg and you can spring back and find the same rock with the straight leg. So you're basically finding that power that can propel you forward, that springy power in your leg, both in this position when the leg is bent and when the leg is straight. And you can play with that a little bit. How much of this propulsion, how much of this power there is in that leg. Of course, it can make your heart beat faster, it can make your breath become quicker. Okay. And then maybe when you do something like hip circles, you might notice that it feels very different on the right and on the left side already. Or even when you rest towards the child's pose, sit your hips back towards the heels. It feels a little bit maybe warmer, more spacious, or more comfortable on that one side that we just worked through. So obviously you can rest here longer if you feel that you need it. Otherwise, let's try the same on the other side. Finding the same support through all four limbs. And then notice what you would need to do somewhere deep inside in your center so that it's still stable, so that it doesn't make you lean to one side or anything like that when you reach with one leg back. And sometimes this is actually already enough to feel that your core is doing quite a work. But today we also want to add that leg to that. So let's try lifting that leg, and it really doesn't need to be high, but you want your toes to point down. If the toes are pointing out, you can always check it by looking down at your toes, then you know that one hip lifted higher than the other. If the toes are pointing down, the hips will be even. You can even imagine you have a cup of tea, hot tea or hot coffee on your sacrum. You don't want it to spill. So this is that one movement when the leg is long. You can also slightly bounce your leg when the toes are tucked under and on the ground. And that other movement is when you bring that knee towards your belly, towards the chest, and you're actually rounding. So your belly rests on the side, the toes are tucked under, and you're really kind of curled up. So that's when you're gonna spring out from that. It's a little bit like Usain Bolt. You want to spring out. So the leg gives you that propulsion to move forward. Yes? It starts from the leg and it moves the body forward. And that is one part of it. And the other part of it is when the leg is straight. And that also gives you the same kind of propulsion. So you can go between the two. As many times as you wish. And then again, rest somewhere for a moment. You might prefer to rest in child's pose. You might prefer to rest upright, sitting on your heels, and maybe that opens the front of your feet a little bit. So find any position that works for you. So you can come up to the kneeling. Then shift your weight a couple of times between one lower leg and the other. And then give more weight to only one of it. And you either slide that foot to make a step forward or maybe lift the whole leg to make that step up. Once you're up in that lunge, give the weight through the front foot, through entire lower leg. you can make this kind of micro pulsation, again, to make everything more awake to begin with. And then you can place your hands somewhere on the blocks, move your foot a little bit more out, and create a few circular movements with the leg and with the hip in the air. Just again to feel that everything wakes up, that you go through all possible angles, all directions of mobility that there can be. Okay, and then you can place the blocks at the highest setting on either side of your front foot. Tuck the toes under in the back foot and lift your knee, but just a tiny bit so that it hovers above the ground. Now, important thing is that you don't lean with all your weight into your wrists. You really want to have it in your legs and in the core so that the hands are there just for balance, really, not to truly support you. So you lift that knee off the ground, the hands are very lightly resting on those blocks, and here's where you start shifting the weight between the leg widths back. So that movement goes like this. Your hips shift all the way back, and your back knee bends quite a bit, so that you're really reaching with your bum towards that back heel. You will feel that there's a lot of things going on waking up in that leg when you do that. And then you shift more forward towards that front foot. So you keep on bouncing like a spring between those two. And there's enough of that springiness in that back leg to bring you up to standing if you want it. All right? And to bring you back. If you want, you can play with that. Okay, and then you can lower that back leg. And let's just check what else we can find in that front leg. So keeping both hips level, you can keep that front leg straightish. It doesn't really need to be completely straight, but with your heel resting on the mat. And here, again, instead of some passive stretches, let's keep it active. Let's make all of that leg engaged, creating again a similar movement we did when we were lying down. That kind of rotation of the leg around its own axis. Okay, then you can bend that leg, find that balance again, to step back, give yourself a moment to feel, to rest, to digest everything that just happened. And then let's try all of that on the other side. Have your blocks ready in front of you. Come up to your kneeling position. You can even do that a couple of times. And then shift the weight from one foot to the other. Sorry, from one lower leg to the other. Give more weight to one side. You might want to just lift the knee and slide the foot forward. You might want to lift the whole leg and make that step forward into that short kind of stance, 90 degrees. You can make this tiny bit of a pulsation movement coming from the hips. And then maybe make that step a little bit longer and move your foot a little bit more out to give it more space. Hands on the blocks so that you don't really need to round the back. Make it your comfortable height, wherever you want them to be. And then make some circles with the hips in the air, feeling how that leg really speaks to the pelvis and to the spine, how all of these parts of the body cooperate with each other all the time. And then you can move the blocks on either side of the front foot, best on the highest setting. Remember, you're not leaning with all the weight to those blocks. It's just light touch for you not to lose balance. The power comes from the ground up. Tuck the toes under in the back foot. Lift your knee just a tiny bit so it's hovering. And then it's that constant shift between the foot, which is in the front, and the foot, which is on the back. When you're shifting the weight to the foot, which is on the back, you would have to bend that knee. Otherwise, you can't shift the weight there. Yeah? You can't move the hips back if you don't bend that back knee. And this is your spring. That back leg is the spring. So if you want it, you could propel yourself all the way to standing and back from that back leg. Yeah, and eventually you can let it rest. Keep that front leg straightish. And it's a little bit as if your knee was drawing a circle in the air when the leg rotates around its own axis, whole leg. So again, you know it's happening if you feel that your thigh twists right and left with this movement. You can put your blocks away, find your balance, step back, sit back, and for a moment, stretch out your legs, roll them in and out, micro bend the knees. Roll yourself down. You can have the hands on the knees and use your arms to move the knees in the air. You can let those legs be suspended in the air without keeping any muscular effort, as if they're floating in the water. You can make them shake for a moment. And you can bend the knees and slowly, slowly land with one foot, land with the other foot. The final movement that will involve a little bit more of the body, so you might move the arms a little bit more to the side and let your knees drop from side to side. This time the legs are relaxed, they're floppy. You might see that your head automatically turns in opposite direction than your knees. Let it happen. And eventually find a place where the legs can rest completely. So it might be that if you're in constructive rest, this is not the position where they can fully rest. And you can feel that they're still on. In which case you can slowly straighten them, but I would recommend to place something underneath the sides, such as a blanket, or maybe even the blocks, but the blocks sometimes might be too high, but something that will take all the weight of your legs so that you know you can rest and surrender them to the ground. You can have your hands resting somewhere where the legs meet the pelvis. And let them rest. Give them time to sink, to release, somewhere where they don't need to work anymore. You can convince them, yes, you know how to turn on quite quickly, but the truly resilient legs will be able to respond to what is needed in the moment. And now they can relax. So there's no need for them to be on, to be active. There's nothing for them to do when you lie down. And I encourage you to stay here for as long as you feel your legs really need to recover and to feel for you to feel fully restful, which might be a good couple of minutes. Feel free to pause this video and stay in relaxation. And then whenever you felt like, okay, I'm ready to move on, I want to use those alive, active legs now. You can bend the knees again. Maybe you want to give them a hug. And then roll yourself to one side. And from there, come up to a seated position. Perhaps that seated position, whichever you have chosen, feels a little bit more stable, a little bit more comfortable than usually. And I hope you're going to enjoy all that power that you can feel in your body, that those legs will be really useful for you to go out and do all those outdoor activities that the spring welcomes you to. I hope that you enjoyed my video. Please don't forget to subscribe. I share one video every Monday morning. Thank you very much.